Can forgiveness heal? Bully's confession after 40 years stuns all. The apology of a bully's confession 40 years later shocks a whole town. They say high school shapes us, but no one talks about the shadows it leaves behind. In the fall of 1983, in the small town of Danvers, Illinois, there were three kinds of students: the invisible, the popular, and the ones who made life hell for everyone in between. Alan Marlo was one of the latter. Tall, broad-shouldered, varsity jacket always half-buttoned. He walked the halls like he owned them. He wasn't the smartest. He wasn't even the best athlete. But Alan had that cruel charisma, the kind that made people follow him, laugh at his jokes, and join in when he humiliated someone else. He didn't need fists. His words were sharper, his eyes colder. And when Alan picked a target, it stuck. Back then, no one stood up to Alan, not teachers, not friends, and definitely not Michael Hartley. Michael was the opposite of Alan in every way. Skinny, bookish, always clenching his backpack like a shield. He wore the same faded windbreaker. Year-round, walked with his head down, and sat alone during lunch. But what really made him a target was what people thought they knew. He's weird. He talks to himself. He's probably writing a hit list. The rumors were nonsense. Michael was just quiet, shy, sensitive. But Alan took it further, pushed him, tripped him, called him names in front of everyone, and one day he crossed a line even he didn't think he'd crossed. October 17, 1983, Michael found a note in his locker. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even signed. It simply said, "You don't deserve this. I see you. Please don't disappear." Michael never told anyone, not even his parents. But that night, he didn't go through with what he had planned. He folded the note carefully, put it inside a copy of Mice and Men, and kept living. 40 years later, in 2023, Alan Marlo returned to Danvers for the first time since graduation. He had built a career in Arizona, some kind of real estate developer. Married, divorced, no kids. His hair was silver now, slicked back with stubborn pride, but his walk was still heavy, like he owned the ground under his feet. Danvers hadn't changed much. The diner still served burnt coffee. The high school still stood like a brick fortress on Hillside Avenue, and the town still whispered behind closed doors. But Alan didn't come back for nostalgia. He came because of a diagnosis and a letter. 2 months earlier, Alan was told he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Inoperable, incurable, the kind of news that quiets your world like a needle dragging across vinyl. For the first time in his life, Alan didn't have control. He couldn't outtalk it, couldn't outrun it. And then, while cleaning out a drawer in his old Arizona office, he found something he'd forgotten. A high school yearbook from 1983. Inside, scribbled between pages, was a photo of Michael Hartley. Alan stared at it. He didn't remember why. He had it. He didn't remember taking it. But something twisted in his chest when he saw the face, the glasses, the slouched shoulders. Then he remembered the note because he had written it. He wrote it on a dare, a stupid moment of pity. After seeing Michael crouched behind the gym, knees scraped, shoulders shaking. For some reason, he had scribbled those words and shoved them into Michael's locker. Never expected it to be read. Definitely didn't mean it. But now, 40 years later, Alan wondered if that one impulsive act might have meant more than he ever imagined. So he came back to Danvers, to the high school, to find out what happened to the boy he once made invisible. School secretary was polite. Surprised but polite. "No, Mr. Hartley doesn't work here anymore." She said he retired in 2018, but he still lives in town. Runs the used bookstore on Harland Avenue. Alan blinked. Bookstore. She smiled. He bought it after retiring. Never changed. The name just put in a coffee machine and a reading bench. The next morning, Alan stood outside Hartley's Books. The glass door rattled with a small chime when he pushed it open. The smell inside was warm paper, dust, and cinnamon. Behind the counter was a man in his early 60s, hair gray and thinning, but unmistakably Michael Hartley. Alan's throat dried. Michael looked up. Their eyes met. A flicker, confusion, then recognition. But Michael said nothing. Alan stepped closer. "Do you remember me?" he asked. Michael paused. "I remember the feeling you left behind." Alan looked down. "I'm not proud of it." "Of who I was?" Michael nodded, folding his hands. "Most people don't come back to say that." Alan hesitated. "Do you remember the note?" Michael blinked slowly. "You wrote that?" he asked. "I did." Michael reached under the counter, pulled out a tattered book of Mice and Men. He opened it, pulled out the folded note, unfolded it. "I kept it," he whispered. "It saved my life." And that's where the story really begins. The Letter in the Locker, Part 2. Michael didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at the paper, creased, yellowed like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. "I always wondered who left this back then. I thought maybe it was a mistake or a joke." Alan swallowed. "Hard. It wasn't. I mean, it started as one. I didn't think you'd even read it. I didn't think it would matter." Michael looked up. It mattered. There was no anger in his voice, no heat, just stillness, like someone who had long since bled out the wound. Alan felt it deep in his chest, like a steel rod through the ribs. He had faced lawyers, developers, zoning boards. He had out-negotiated men twice as educated. But standing here in front of Michael Hartley, he felt small. "I don't know why I came," Alan said. I couldn't stop thinking about it, about you, about everything I did." Michael folded the note and slid it back into the book. "You were cruel," he said softly. "But you weren't the worst part. The worst part was that." Everyone laughed. The people watched and did nothing. Alan nodded. Michael glanced at the bookstore window where morning sunlight leaked through the glass in golden ribbons. "You remember Jenny Langley?" Michael asked. Alan furrowed his brow. "Jenny, the girl with the violin." Michael nodded. "She died in 1991, car accident, married with 2 kids. We kept in touch after high school. She was one of the few people who didn't look through me." Alan's jaw tightened. "I never knew you didn't ask." Silence. Then Michael did something unexpected. He motioned toward the reading bench near the back of the store. "You want coffee?" Alan blinked. "Really?" Michael shrugged. "You came all this way. I figure you're not here to buy Tolstoy." The coffee was bitter, a little burnt, but it grounded the moment. They sat facing each other, the worn bench between 2 shelves of historical biographies. Alan glanced around photos on the walls, a dusty chessboard, books stacked like bricks on every surface. It was the opposite of his life, warm, cluttered, alive. Michael sipped quietly. Alan finally asked, "Do you ever think about it? High school, I mean." Michael leaned back. "Only when someone walks in with 40 years of guilt on their shoulders." Alan almost laughed, but there was no smile. "I've done a lot in my life," he said. "I made money, bought houses, flew private a few times, but none of it ever filled the part one left behind." Michael didn't respond. Alan pressed on. "Guess I thought if I came back, if I told you I was sorry, it would mean something." Michael nodded. "Slowly, it does, but not in the way you think." Alan looked up. "Forgiveness," Michael said, "isn't a transaction. You don't buy it with a plane ticket or an apology. You sit in the mess of what you did, and you let it change you." Alan stared at the steam rising from his cup. "I'm dying, Michael." Michael didn't flinch. "I know." That afternoon, they walked together, 2 older men, in a town that had barely changed. Down Main Street, past the hardware store, the now empty movie theater, and a high school field where boys still kicked up dust during football practice. "You ever get married?" Michael asked. Alan shook his head, engaged once she left. Sighed. I always seemed somewhere else. She was right. You have family? No, just some cousins. We don't talk. Michael nodded. That's a kind of loneliness no one sees. They walked in silence. Then Alan stopped at the fence near the football bleachers. This is where I shoved you, right? He asked. Sophomore year during gym. Michael glanced at the ground. Twisted my ankle. Spent 3 weeks on crutches. Alan looked at him. Why didn't you report it? Michael shrugged. To who? The coach said boys would be boys. The principal told me to toughen up. Alan's fists clenched. God. Michael touched his arm. It's in the past, but I didn't forget it. I just learned how to build something around it. They stood there watching boys run wind sprints. A whistle blew. A kid laughed. Life went on. Later that night, Michael handed Alan a book. This is yours, he said. Alan looked down. It was the same. Yearbook from 1983. His signature on the front, scratched in pen. You had this? I found it at a garage sale years ago. I bought it because I thought maybe one day I'd understand the people inside it. Alan flipped through the pages. Photos, smiling. Faces, lies printed in ink. Then he stopped. There was a note tucked inside the back cover. If you're reading this, it means you're trying. Keep going. Alan looked up. You wrote this. Michael smiled faintly. To myself, but maybe also for you. Alan's throat tightened. You think I can change? He asked. Michael nodded. Only if you stop trying to erase the past and start trying to build something from it. The next morning, Alan didn't go back to his hotel. He went to the high school with permission from the administration. He stood before the senior class, just 38 students in folding chairs. He cleared his throat. My name is Alan Marlo. I was a student here 40 years ago. Back then, I thought being feared was the same as being respected. I bullied people. I made them feel small. And now I've come to tell you what that did, not just to them, but to me. The room was silent. Alan looked down at the journal in his hands. Inside were letters he'd written over the past week. One to Michael, one to himself, and one to every person he could remember tormenting. You'll leave here and forget most of what you learn in classrooms. But you'll never forget how people made you feel, or how you made them feel. I'm proof of that. When he finished, a few students clapped. A few didn't know what to do, but one girl, a quiet one in the back, stood up and asked, Did anyone forgive you? Alan looked up. Yes, one did. But I'm still learning to forgive myself. In the weeks that followed, Alan didn't fly back to Arizona. He stayed in Danvers. He helped Michael expand the bookstore, installed new shelves, started a youth book club, paid for a coffee machine that actually worked. He even reconnected with a few former classmates. Some ignored him, some came around, but none of that mattered as much as what he did each morning. Walk to the bookstore, unlock the door, and sit by the window, waiting for the next quiet person who needed to be seen. Last part. The legacy lives on. Spring melted into early summer in Danvers, and the air hung heavy with warmth and promise. The bookstore stayed open late these days. Michael, now quietly revered around town, had become more than a shopkeeper. He was a listener, a keeper of unspoken griefs. The letters that changed us section grew with every week, filled with folded papers, some typed, some scribbled in desperate ink, all signed with initials, tears, or nothing at all. But Michael noticed one letter in particular. It was placed anonymously between two books in the trauma and recovery section, folded in a tight square, taped shut. He wasn't sure why he picked it up. Something about the way it was jammed between pages, almost like it wanted to be found. He opened it. I'm not like them. I don't want to hurt anyone, but they've chosen me, and I don't know how to make it stop. I don't want to bring a knife to school, but I'm running out of options. If no one listens, then why should I care? Info. Michael's breath caught. He read it again and again. The letters had always carried pain. But this one had something more, a fuse. He called the school immediately. Principal O'Hare met with him after hours. This could be a hoax, the principal said cautiously. Michael placed the letter on the desk. It's not. I've seen enough to know when someone's whispering for help right before they scream. O'Hare sighed. We'll look into it. But unless there's a name, there is, Michael said. The initials Mel. O'Hare tapped a pen against the desk. There's a Marcus Levin in 10th grade. Quiet kid. Mother's a nurse. Father's not around, Michael closed his eyes. Another Marcus. Another boy in the background. Another quiet storm. Michael left the school with the letter in his coat pocket and a pit in his stomach. He hadn't felt this kind of urgency since Alan showed up in that rainstorm months ago. He found Marcus the next day. The boy was tucked into a back corner of the store, flipping through a graphic novel with worn edges, skinny, hollow-cheeked, eyes like cracked marbles. Michael approached slowly. Hey, he said, smiling gently. That's a good one, Neil Gaiman. Right. Marcus nodded, silent. Michael sat on the bench beside him, not close, just near enough to feel safe. You like stories with broken heroes? Michael asked. Marcus gave a small nod. They don't pretend. Silence stretched between them like a bridge made of breath. Michael reached into his coat and unfolded the letter. Was this you? He asked, voice steady, gentle. Marcus flinched, froze, then slowly nodded. What came next wasn't loud. There was no police call, no dramatic confrontation, no viral video, just coffee, warmth, time, presence, and a story. Alan's story. Michael read it aloud, too. Marcus in small pieces over the next few days after. School. There was a boy once, he'd say. A boy who made others feel smaller so he didn't feel so empty. He thought being feared meant he mattered. But one day he came back because the silence inside him had grown louder than all the noise he made outside. Marcus listened, absorbed every word like it was medicine. Eventually he spoke. They said if I ratted they'd find me, that I'd regret it, that no one would believe a school shooter waiting to happen. Michael's heart shattered. You're not that, he said. And you're not alone. Word of Marcus's confession stayed between them for now, but Michael didn't stop there. He reached out to the superintendent, the school board, even the mayor. Danvers High didn't just need anti-bullying posters and punishment codes. It needed healing, dialogue, accountability, a space where victims could speak and offenders could be made to understand instead of just punished. So they launched it. The Locker Project. Every locker at Danvers High was given an envelope inside. Blank paper, pens, and a note that read, write what you wish someone had said to you. Then leave it here or share it with us. What began as a whisper turned into a thunderclap. Within 2 weeks, more than 400 letters poured in. I'm sorry, I laughed when you cried. I lied about you to make friends. I was scared. I still am. I wanted to die in 8th grade. Your smile saved me. You never knew it, but you were my reason to come to school. Michael created a wall at the bookstore. Letters that saved us where anonymous lines of bravery could live on. One day, a group of boys walked. In football jackets, swagger, faces Michael had seen before. They circled the wall. Then one of them stepped forward and pinned a note. To Marcus, you were right. We saw you drowning and threw stones instead of ropes. I was scared of your silence because it reminded me of my own. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm sorry. T.W. Michael stared. He didn't need to ask. He remembered Trevor Watson. Son of a preacher, captain of the varsity team. Sharp tongue, sharper eyes. Redemption is never clean, but it is possible. Marcus became a quiet figure. In-town legend. He never told the full story, not to the news, not to the internet, but he came back every Saturday to volunteer at the bookstore. One day he found a copy of Mice and Men with a yellowed sticky note inside. You are not broken. You are becoming. M. He took it home, framed it. Michael Hartley's hair went white. He slowed, but he never stopped. When asked what saved his town, he always answered the same. A locker, a letter, and a man who came back too late, but still showed up. On the 5th anniversary of Alan's passing, they unveiled a bronze plaque. In front of Danvers High, it read in honor of Alan Marlo, 1966 to 2024. Proof that even our worst mistakes can become our greatest lessons. You don't have to stay who you were. Marcus Levin stood beside Michael that day. Older now, taller. Quiet strength radiated from him, and behind them an entire wall of students held letters in their hands. Because some people change the world with a speech, some with a vote, but some like Alan change it with an apology written on notebook paper, folded gently and slipped into a locker. When they think no one is watching. The end. What would you do? In his place? Share your thoughts below, like this story. Follow for more powerful human bully stories that inspire change. Stay until the end. The final twist will leave you speechless.